Have you ever forgotten your phone? How did you realize you had forgotten it? I assume the realization didn't just hit you out of nowhere, causing you to suddenly exclaim, "Damn it," and smack your forehead for no reason. More likely, I'd guess you realized your mistake when you reached for your phone, fumbled in the pocket where it usually rests, and were momentarily confused. That's when you mentally replayed the morning's events, pinpointing exactly where you went wrong, where in the process you deviated from your routine, messing up the sequence. Frustrating, isn't it? For me, it happened when I woke up to my phone's alarm and noticed the battery had drained. The phone was new and had this annoying habit of keeping open apps from letting it go to sleep, which drained all the power. So, while I was showering, I put it on charge instead of tossing it into my bag, like I usually do. It was a tiny step away from my routine, but it was enough. Once I was in the shower, my brain kicked back into its normal routine, and that was it. That's when you forget things. For example, that morning, I wasn't thinking about inhaling and exhaling. I was thinking about whether I should grab a coffee on the way to work, which I did. I wasn't thinking about how my digestive system was handling my breakfast, but rather whether I'd leave work in time to pick up my daughter Emily from daycare, or if I'd get stuck with some overtime nonsense again. That's the point. Most of your brain works on autopilot so that the other parts can freely and actively focus on what lies ahead of you. Think about it. Think about the last time you took public transport. What do you actually remember of the journey? Not much, if anything at all, I'd guess. We mentally combine our similar bus, subway, and train rides into one, and remembering any of them in detail afterward is nearly impossible, research shows. If you do something often enough, it becomes a routine. Keep doing it, and it shifts from the conscious part of your brain to the one that handles your legs, guts, and other unconscious functions. You stop thinking about it. Soon, your commute to work takes as much thought as breathing does. In other words, none at all. You could call it going on autopilot, but therein lies the danger. If your routine is disrupted, you can only adapt to it if you can interrupt your brain's autopilot. My ability to remember my phone sitting on the bedside table charging would only work if I interrupted the morning routine, where the phone was already in the bag in the hallway. Unfortunately, I didn't think that far. I stepped into the shower and resumed my routine. The exception was forgotten. Autopilot was engaged. My brain slipped into the morning routine. I showered, listened to the radio talk about the amazing summer weather, fed Emily her breakfast, and buckled her into the car. She was so cute, talking about how the warm sun was blinding her and how she wouldn't be able to sleep on the way to daycare. It was routine. My phone lying on the bedside table charging wasn't part of that routine, and my brain was in the routine where the phone was in the bag. And that's why I forgot my phone. I wasn't careless or forgetful. I was just too weak to override my brain's morning routine. Autopilot was on. I left the house. It was an unbearably hot day, even though it wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. The sun had been burning through the windows since I woke up to my phone's deceitful alarm. I almost burned my hand on the steering wheel. I heard Emily settle into her car seat in the back. From the sound of her breathing, it seemed like she had fallen asleep after all. got to work, turned in a report, sat in the morning meeting. It wasn't until I went to grab a cup of coffee and reached into my bag for my phone that the illusion shattered. I fumbled for it and started replaying the morning's events. The dying battery. How I had set the phone to charge. How it was left behind. My phone was on the bedside table. Autopilot disengaged. The day only got hotter. The morning sun turned into the afternoon's scorching heat. The pavement bubbled. The cracks in the street seemed to widen. People swapped coffee for smoothies, and with jackets off, sleeves rolled up, ties loosened, and foreheads damp, they flocked to parks to sunbathe and barbecue. The metal window frames creaked in the heat. The thermometer shot through the roof. Thankfully, the office was air-conditioned. And then, as always, the temperature dropped as the afternoon wore on. When I left work, with another day under my belt, I cursed myself for having forgotten my phone. In the car, it smelled stale and a bit sweet, like something had been left to rot in the heat. When I pulled into the driveway and heard the familiar crunch of the gravel under the wheels, I was greeted by my husband. "Where's Emily?" Damn it. As if forgetting the phone wasn't enough, I had forgotten to pick her up from daycare. I jumped back into the car and drove a bit too fast, and on my way to the daycare door, I rehearsed an excuse to maybe avoid making things worse with the daycare worker who had always disliked me. I saw a note on the door. Fresh paint. Use the back door. Did they paint it today? This morning, it was still. I froze. My knees started to tremble. Fresh paint. A change in routine. My phone was on the bedside table. I hadn't been here this morning. My phone was on the bedside table. I had driven past because I'd had coffee. I hadn't dropped Emily off. My phone was on the bedside table. She had switched seats in the back. I hadn't seen her in the rearview mirror. My phone was on the bedside table. In the shade, she had fallen asleep and hadn't said anything when I drove past her daycare. My phone was on the bedside table. She had changed the routine. My phone was on the bedside table. She had changed the routine, and I had forgotten to drop her off. My phone was on the bedside table. 9 hours. In the car. In that sun. No air. No water. No strength. No help. In that heat. A steering wheel too hot to touch. How it had smelled when I got back into the car. I walked back to the car, shocked, empty. I opened the car door. My phone was on the bedside table, and my daughter was dead. Autopilot disengaged.